me if I talk a little bit about how I came to this podium from a personal standpoint. One of the soldiers that was mentioned is a neighbor of mine across the street. And he came into my office a couple of years ago and described what had happened to him and the extent of his injuries. And I, in my mind, was calculating the amount that should result in compensation. And then the number of 13,000 or whatever it was, or 14,000, came up, and I mean, it's just not capable of being believed that one of our young people could go overseas, serve our country, have his legs very severely damaged, and then come back and be. And he showed me the letter. Congratulations, you've got $14,000. You may wish to consult with a financial advisor as to how to invest that for your life. I mean, that was cruel beyond words. And then he had a big file, and I must admit that, and I'm pretty knowledgeable about current affairs and matters relating to the military, but I had no idea about what the so-called reform for the new Veterans Charter meant. I'm reminded of one of my colleagues who, when I was talking about reform of the criminal, I said, "Reform, don't speak to me about reform, things are bad enough as they are." And they may have been bad enough before, but the new Veterans Charter is folly upon folly. First of all, the concept of giving people lump sums that are young people, we already know from what happened with giving out lump sums to the Alaskan Aboriginals, what happened to that. It's not a desirable idea to hand lump sums to people in their 20s. And secondly, there's a reason why you have these types of pensions in place. And that is that when people are working their way through their injuries, they need that pension there as a safety net until they can get themselves reestablished and see where they're going to go on with the rest of their life. So anyway, this neighbor came in, and we were looking at the individual case then, and I said, well, let me look at this labyrinth of procedures and laws that they put in place. And they were probably written by the person who found that the movie Catch-22 wasn't real enough. It's one Catch-22 after another. You just cannot believe it. Lawyers are used to reading mind-boggling stuff. This stuff is beyond mind-boggling. It's no mind-boggling. I don't even know who wrote this stuff, trying to come up with percentages for this, but you can't go over this percentage, and you're back to that. And it all strikes me as very arbitrary. So we looked at it, and I said, well, each of these individual cases is just a labyrinth to go in and try to appeal these things. Is basically playing in a rigged game. If you go into a casino and you try to win by going back to the same table that's rigged, you're not going to win. And the way the statute is written, and the regulations, it's basically a rigged game. So I mentioned that there might be it seemed to me that this whole should remain open. It's a very untested area as to how far the right to life and liberty, I mean, it's tested in certain areas. Liberty, if somebody goes to lock you up, your liberty interest is affected. But if they make it so you cannot have liberty to live your life in a normal way, how far does that go? That remains a matter of debate. But we believe that there's a basis to invoke Section 7 of the Charter with respect to these young people, and that will be part of it. And there's another part of the Insight decision that does come up, though, and that's the court actually found that that Insight was allowed to stay open because the decision affecting it was made arbitrarily. And if you go through these files of these young men and women, you will see time and time again where there's a mindless following of policy and other types of approaches that we believe can be described as arbitrary. But the other area that we are focusing on is the Section 15 of the Charter. Section 15 of the, and I hope this isn't turning into a law lecture, I bore you too much, but I'll take the test at the end and you'll all be granted admission to the Surrey Bar. And the Surrey Bar is the one in Cloverdale. Section 15 of the Charter contains equality rights. As part of the Constitution, the section prohibits discrimination perpetrated by governments of Canada. And it has an exception. It says, with the exception of ameliorative, that's a great word, ameliorative programs like affirmative action, and rights or privileges are guaranteed under the Constitution. So every individual is equal before and under the law and has the right to equal protection and equal benefit of the law without discrimination. And then it lists a number, so it's a general prohibition of discrimination, which we will rely on. And then also you cannot be discriminated because of a physical disability, which we will also rely on. I would say, though, with respect to these the programs for ameliorative programs, one would have thought that the government would put in place programs for which our veterans would receive extra benefits, not be in a position where they don't receive the benefits that others in our society are entitled to. And Jim was telling you about some of the examples. We had a meeting with a soldier that isn't here tonight, with a number of my young lawyers that are working with me, and I asked them to go out and find me slip and fall cases. Now these are cases where, and I don't want you to try this, do not go into the Safeway store and throw grapes down on the floor and then slip on them, because I'm telling you that you're going to get $395,000. But there has been a slip and fall case in this jurisdiction where somebody got $395,000. The comparisons that we have, and we're looking at different types of actions. We're looking at soldiers that were injured here by enemy action. That's one type. We got soldiers that were injured by doing their job, basically the same as they would if they were a lumberjack or a worker in any place of employment. And then we have soldiers that were injured by the negligence and alleged criminal negligence of their superiors. We have some in the room that were injured by a bomb that went off, or a Claymore mine that went off, and their superiors have been charged by the military with criminal negligence in that case. Now, in the normal course of events, if you got somebody pointing a bomb at you or a Claymore mine and it caused you serious grief, you'd be able to sue. And that right has been taken away. And we're challenging that. We're challenging that is proper to take that away. Why should a person have those rights taken away from them merely because they're serving in the military? Or put it another way, if you're going to take it away, if you're property, it's like an expropriation. You're entitled to have fair compensation for that right. So these are the sorts of framework for a legal argument that we're coming forward with. Now, our firm is Miller Thompson. I started out practicing here, and Gordon was mentioning that we've been dealing with each other for a number of years. We were both involved in the corrections system back in the early 70s, and one of my early cases in 1973 involved taking a challenge to a piece of corrections legislation and successfully having it ruled unconstitutional. So I've always been, right from the get-go of my career, a person who was willing to take challenges, and I'm certainly prepared to do that in this case. But what about my firm? Our firm calls itself a business law firm, so people are kind of surprised that we do anything for nothing. But I went with this proposal to our national executive, and I got nothing but absolute enthusiastic support from them. And one of the reasons was, and the politicians should pay attention to this, every one of them, every person in that room that came from all of our offices across Canada, Montreal, Toronto, Markham, Kitchener-Waterloo, London, Saskatoon, Regina, Edmonton, Calgary, every one of them knew somebody that was affected by this. This is a problem that is throughout Canada. And I believe that quite apart from what we succeeded in the lawsuit here, because we're not going to do this, I told Jim about this, if he thought I was going to do this quietly, because he's a PC, I was told, that it's not going to be quiet, but I've since learned that he's not too quiet about it either. We're going to raise the awareness of the public on this, as well as fighting the legal suit, and as part of it. Part of the problem is that before my neighbor's son walked into the room, I probably had in my mind that there had been an improvement in the veterans' position because everybody kept saying that. But there's nobody cross-examining them on that. When you walk in front of a television camera with your prepared bullet points and you're a bureaucrat in the Veterans Affairs Admin, you can get up and say everything's better, but saying that white is black doesn't make it so. So we hope by this litigation to further educate the public, and by doing that to provide support. Now the other thing that I've asked our firm across Canada to do is to do as we've done here in this room. We are part of the community in all of those centers that we have offices. We have contacts in the business community. I'm asking my partners to reach out to them as you have done here, and to give other types of support, because in my many years of experience in dealing with issues like this is that the legal issues are only part of it. If we can get the type of support for these young people that are shown in this room, they will realize that we're here for them, that there's no reason to despair, that there's going to be a solution to it, that they will have a bright future. And we can reach out and have people try to help them reestablish themselves in their communities and have a success both legally and personally. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Don, and thank you very much to Miller Thompson for taking this most important case on. I listened, Don, as I've always listened to every word you said with respect to the legal proceedings, and I'm able to sum them up with something like, this isn't right and we're going to fix it. Is that a fair interpretation of what you said? All right. Thank you very much, Miller Thompson and Don Sorochan.